we
There was a question about Mainz, which we should actually address.
Yeah, we should talk a bit about Mainz. I'm very sad about it. For the viewers who don't know, it has been recently announced that the Mainz Chess Classics are not going to happen this year.
At least this year, and I think I can speak for pretty much everybody that we hope that it comes back at some point in the future, because it has been a wonderful event, and I mean it's an incredibly tough event, and it's very hard to do well in it, but it's always well organized. It's been for many years now held in a wonderful hotel, which it's just very pleasant to be there, and generally speaking, it was in many ways a highlight of the summer, and it's a great pity it seems to be gone for at least a while, and we all wish for it to come back, and we wish Hans Walter the success in all his endeavors, because I mean he has been the driving force behind the event. Definitely. And without him there would be no Mainz, and that would be a great loss for the chess community, I think.
No, I completely agree. And personally, I discovered it kind of late. I played like once in 2002 or something, but I went last year, because before I was always thinking, come on, this is a ridiculously tough tournament, it's very hard to make any money there, and so on and so forth. But I really tremendously enjoyed playing last year, because it's just such a well-run and beautiful event. And in Germany, we always have these huge discussions about combining top chess and amateurs chess, or whatever you want to call it. In Mainz, basically, this culture was lived. There were top players. There was always Vichy and Aronia and Grishuk. You were playing a lot of matches, and whatever, you name them, every top player has been there over the years. While there were also thousands of amateurs playing in the Open, and a whole lot of strong players as well. And everybody, the atmosphere was so great. It was so well run. The Rheingold-Halle was beautiful. The hotel you mentioned. So It was really a very pleasant event to go to. I mean, it grew money and stuff. I mean, it was just nice to be there. So for me, I decided I was going to go every year. So I'm very sad now that it's not going to happen anymore. But we do hope, and knowing Hans Walter and his energy and his passion for chess,
he's obviously not giving up. It's a question of the economic situation and finding new sponsors. But
exactly. Yeah. So yeah, but it's just sad it's gone, because it was really one, or arguably the greatest event in the German calendar, and to see this leaving is of course very sad, and we do hope it's going to be back. We got some questions, maybe it's the same question by Mo83. How many games must I study for a good endgame technique? I have some very controversial advice on this, and I'm sure especially people with chess culture will disagree. But I think you really shouldn't be studying endings. So many other problems. I have no idea about your rating. Let me look it up. It's better than I thought. My apologies then. 2227, 2094. But I think it's just more important to learn to calculate and get the tactics right, and positional themes and openings and so on. And in endings, even if you didn't study them so much, you're not going to drop that many points to make it worth the time to study a lot of endings. But I'm probably wrong about this, and I'm always saying this, and people have booed me for it, and my ending technique is probably not the best. So what's your take on this?
I think, well, it's a slightly disgusting approach, even if it's correct. The point is, current chess being what it is, you're much. I mean, I've said pretty much the same when I had this. Well, let's call it a well on Cressbook. That basically, if you have real problems in the opening, you're just not going to see many endgames.
Yeah, that's.
And I understand what you're saying, and I agree with it in parts, but. On the other hand, it kind of depends on what you feel your limitations are, because I don't think you can become a properly good player without some grasp of endings, and you tend to
I'm kidding.
Yeah, I think you sort of overplaying your position on this a little bit. It's also not really for me to defend, proper endgame study, because I've always felt that I have a very poor grasp of basics in many really, really basic endgames, and I've always felt that I should have studied this more. So it's also a problem for me, obviously, but From the practical point of view, I have to agree. It's much more important to study openings because this is where you will get killed with 100% certainty if you don't do your homework. Whereas you can somehow get by in endings if you teach yourself to calculate. I mean, endgames can be played, and many players, perhaps myself included, treat endgames as simply as a problem with a finite. I have no idea how to pronounce this word. It's a position which you can solve pretty much, at least starting from the simpler ones. And you can approach them even without knowing the basics as simply studies which you can solve.
Yeah, so of course, in a perfect world, you want to study endings, but the problem is with limited time, somebody asks, how many hours should I put in? Normally, I think there is more pressing issues. But
no, I have to agree with that. Sure. Yeah.
There is one book that I really liked and that helped me. I read it when I was like 16, 17. It's by a dude called Chereshevsky. It's called Endgame Strategy. And that was kind of an eye-opener for me. It's not so much on technical endings, but more about principles, if there are any in the endings. Like one chapter is called Do Not Hurry. Of course, it doesn't apply to anything. But I really liked that book, and I learned a lot of stuff from it. So if you want to read a book on the ending that I found very interesting and well written, even though it's an old book.
No, you can also pick up pretty much anything that Dvoretsky has written, and this will be of immense help. But I mean, as I said, it's very hard to argue with the fact that in today's climate, you just have to dedicate most of your time to openings. But I think it will help your chess immensely if you can find the time and invest some time into getting the basics right, and because I mean the most obvious example why you should is that there are many middle game positions in which you have a choice of defending an inferior middle game for a while and perhaps not surviving, or liquidating into some endgame, let's say some rook endgame, a pawn down, which might or might not be drawn. So if you invest some time into figuring out which of those are drawn and which aren't, this will save you a tremendous amount of time and effort at the board, because you will just know whether you should or you shouldn't do that. And those types of situations actually come up very often. So it's not pointless at all. And if you find the time, you should do it. But frankly, as I said in the beginning, if you don't work on openings, starting from a certain level, you will just not see many endgames at all. So that has to be the priority.
Yeah. Apologies to Carsten Muller, and I absolutely respect all the work that's done on endings, and I think it is very beneficial. It's just, not my main approach, in case we misunderstood. Anyway, let's move on from damn endings. Candidus asks, do e4 players have any real chance to threaten Aronian's annoying e7, e5? The answer is no, and you should watch my excellent DVDs on a black repertoire for e4, e5 to learn why there's nothing at all white can do. No, I'm kidding, but e4, e5 is doing very well theoretically.
But generally speaking, black is doing very well.
Yeah, that's also true.
I mean, black players who take the time to actually work out what they want to do in the openings tend to do very well these days. And I mean, the whole Marshall anti-Marshall complex is doing fine, as actually is the Kara right now. I think the Kara stands quite well currently, and it doesn't mean chess is solved. And frankly, despite Jan's wonderful work on the DVD, I'm pretty sure you can find some positions in which you can still play with white in the Marshall, but it's not much fun, and you will have to work quite hard, which for me is a problem, obviously.
It's a problem for anybody. No, the thing is, while obviously chess isn't solved and we see plenty of exciting games, chess, objectively, it should be a draw. So if you're willing to work hard on your openings with black, it's normally easier to get at least a playable position, or a position where you're not under a huge pressure, and then the game starts. While with white, sometimes it's harder to find an idea where you really have an advantage. But that's a problem everybody has to deal with, and it can be addressed by working hard. So let's look at more questions. Sveshnikov? Nah, I don't want to touch the Sveshnikov. Why is it more or less out of fashion at top level? Is it actually? I'm not sure it's that much
people are playing it less for whatever reason. Because for me, I've really no idea why.
I think the Sveshnikov is doing fine, but the problem is a lot of people... I mean, Sveshnikov, to explain to the viewers who don't know what we're talking about, is this horrible looking but actually decent opening. And I think, at least, okay, I'm not a huge specialist, but I'm not aware of any huge refutation. The problem repertoire-wise is if you're going to play this, you also need to be ready for 3 bishop b5, which is a major mainline nowadays, be it e6, g6, d6, whatever.
I'm one of the people who's trying to prove white has something there.
And this move 3 knight c3, which is sort of a clever shortcut for white if he doesn't want to go for the Sveshnikov. Because here after knight f6, planning to transpose after, let's say, d4 takes e5. White has the additional options of e5, which is not so great as far as I know. But here bishop b5 is a more serious move than without these knight moves, actually. Because in the other line, without knight c3, knight f6, the knight often goes to e7. Well, here it's stuck on f6. And this is a line white can hope for an edge, as far as I know.
Yeah, even this has been worked out to, I mean, the current state of this line is black is fine, but it can get very sharp, and white does have a decent hope of getting somewhere. I'm not sure what the question about the Russian Superfinal actually is about, but there have been changes announced to the system, and I think from next year it will be an 8 people round robin as opposed to a 12 people round robin. I think time will tell whether this is a good thing or not, but what the Federation is trying to do is create a more diverse system of tournaments, because right now basically what we have, just for a second too, I understand this is a bit of a local problem, but since I've been asked, the High League, the so-called High League, which is now used as a qualifier for the Superfinal, is an immensely strong Swiss tournament, which nevertheless gets very little attention in the press, and really, apart from qualifying some people for the Superfinal, serves no obvious role. And the Federation is looking for ways to make the calendar more attractive for everybody, and the changes to the structure of the Superfinal are mainly to do with that. And frankly, if it's still going to be held in December,
basically what you're talking about is the format of the Russian Championship, and I don't even know what it's exactly myself. You have this High League you mentioned, which is
the High League is held,
qualify for the round robin.
It's held normally it's held in September, and it's a Swiss with, I don't know, the average rating of the top 20 being, I don't know, 2650 or 2660 or whatever it is. So very, very strong tournament, from which normally 5 or 6, or maybe if there are a lot of people refusing to play the Superfinal, maybe there are 7 people qualifying for the Superfinal. And they want to change this structure somehow. Frankly, I'm not a huge expert on what the proposed changes are. I know that starting from 2011, the Superfinal itself will be 8 people instead of 12. And as I was beginning to say, I mean, if it's going to be held in December, frankly, the less games the better, because by this point, normally top players start playing at the end of September when the European Club Cup comes, and we play pretty much non-stop until the end of December. And the Superfinal is not a very easy tournament to play in. So, I mean, 7 games instead of 11, from this perspective, is not such a bad idea.
Yeah, but then again, it's kind of short for determining a national champion. That's a very recent discussion. Well, it's been a discussion for a long time in Germany too, because we have this 33 or 45 or whatever it is, people Swiss as the German championship, where the top players, to put it mildly, haven't been overly interested in participating, and there's a lot of discussion going on right now about changes of the format, so it's interesting to hear how it's done there. But of course, we can't compare ourselves with Russia, because there in the Superfinal you have guys like Kayakin, Svidler, Nepomniachtchi, Grishuk, and so on. So it's a proper super tournament where obviously we don't quite have the player material here.